So this is probably has to be one of the more fucked up moments from Gravity Falls when you really begin to think about it, because it's kind of hard to imagine that this actually happened, and yet this is exactly what was the case. Like, okay, so like, what am I trying to say here? Like, you know how Journal 3 has some very like disturbing moments in it, like how like Bill has that whole book, like had that whole poem where like note that he wrote, and how he was talking about how he was going to throw Dipper off the water tower after he was done with him, and that was like messed up. And there's all these other things that happened in the show. Yeah, that's pretty messed up. But something that I find even more messed up than that was a little line that Dipper said in Not What He Seems, and then some other things that he mentioned in Journal 3. And when you really put them into perspective, it's kind of messed up what he meant, what he was basically referring to. Okay, so what am I trying to explain is that, as you all know, back when season 2 began, in the first episode, Scary-oke, those two government agents, Powers and Triggers, they arrive at the town and are basically looking for, anomalies and whatnot because Stan's portal, got them noted and stuff like that. So they're basically out here looking for, the anomalies and stuff. And Dipper, of course, being like desperate to find someone who will believe him, he mentions that to them, and he ends up going and meeting them. And you already know the plot to Scary-oke if you're watching this video, so you already know that. But like, during the whole event, like, as we know, Dipper basically shows them Journal 3, and Powers and Triggers don't believe him. Like, they find the drawings that were in the book to be kind of stupid, probably because Ford drew them, and like some other stuff in them, and like they just don't buy it. So like, obviously they're walking away. So to get them to pay attention, Dipper he basically goes onto one of the pages that on Ford's section of the journal, and he summons zombies. Like, he recites that ancient chant that, I don't know why Ford put that in there, because he's an idiot, but like, he recites that ancient chant, and suddenly like a zombie appears, and like they eventually, and all that stuff happens. But then like, after all that, a horde of zombies comes out, and like they attack, and Powers and Triggers gets dragged away, and they basically disappear into the woods. And like, Dipper is left assuming that those guys were like, eaten and stuff.
Get down! Oh my gosh, what have I done?
And as we know, obviously, at the end of the episode, Powers and Triggers do survive being eaten, survive the zombie attack. So and all that. So like, they made it out alive. Like, we know that, and they eventually go on to spy on Dipper and Mabel until they make their move during Not What He Seems. And during Not What He Seems, well, actually first, like, in the journal, like in the real life Journal 3, there's this one page, like the one page where they're talking about, where Dipper's writing about his experience there, and he mentions that he was like, the party was a total train wreck, and there was a zombie attack, and then in brackets he says, "Sorry, Powers and Triggers." So he's basically referring to how he's feeling bad about Powers and Triggers being like taken by the zombies and stuff. And like okay, like he because we obviously know, because while we as the viewers know that Powers and Triggers survived, like Dipper doesn't know that. Like, he has no idea that the two guys survived being eaten by zombies, so he assumes that they were dragged away by zombies and stuff. And basically the whole situation that arises eventually is that in Not What He Seems, when Powers and Triggers reemerge, like, Dipper mentions, quote unquote, he says, quote,
"The government guys? I thought you got eaten by zombies."
And like, Powers and Triggers then mention how they survived barely, and how Powers used Trigger as a human shield, and he cried like a baby and stuff, like, all that stuff. What's pretty messed up about that is just what Dipper was referring to by his statement. It's like, "I thought you guys were eaten by zombies." Like I think it kind of is pretty clear that he assumed that these guys didn't make it. Like, and he even mentions that in Journal 3 in a later page, like, when you're talking about the events of the Love God, like the Nightmare Head, like Stan's like horrifying balloon that traumatized a bunch of kids, like, in the brackets at the bottom, he mentions that, note, "Call me crazy, but I keep thinking I'm seeing those government agents everywhere. Maybe I just feel guilty about letting them getting eaten by zombies."
Holy fucking shit.
Yeah. That is an actual statement in Journal 3 by Dipper Pines. So what am I trying to explain here is that from what we've been able to establish from what Dipper says in the journal and what he said in the show, Dipper Pines assumed that for the few days between the events of Scary-oke and Now It Seems, that his actions resulted in Powers and Triggers being killed and eaten by zombies. Like, think about how messed up that is for a second. Like, he assumed that his actions resulted in 2 men losing their lives to, like, zombies. Like, they got eaten and, stuff. And, he was pretty chill about it. Like, he says here, like, he feels a little bit bad feels guilty and stuff. Like, that he's assuming that it's his subconscious assuming that making him feel guilty about this. Like, I'm not an expert on this shit, but, like, isn't there something about how, like, people who commit a crime or do something, like, illegal, like murder or something, like, they have this guilty conscience where they start seeing, like, they think about, like, seeing their, the person that they've killed, like, I think that was in a Sopranos episode that I was watching.
But no matter what I do, I feel guilty.
But, like, yeah, this is kind of messed up to think, like, Dipper assumes that his guilty conscience is making him feel guilty about these 2 guys being eaten on his watch because of him. Like, what the fuck? Like, Dipper is sitting around here for the events of, like, several episodes, perfectly chill about this fact, and not once did he go like, oh, hey, guys, these 2 government agents, they are kind of missing, maybe I should tell someone about this. Like, what? Like, he was perfectly fine with getting away with murder, and, like, what? Like, that's what it's literally referencing. Like, this is what it's all adding up to. Dipper believed that for, like, 10 episodes that his actions resulted in the death of Powers and Triggers because he assumed that they were eaten by zombies. So he, instead of feeling guilty or, like, having making the decision to tell someone about this, he decides to hold it to himself and does not say anything. Like, what? Like, he's literally perfectly fine with the fact that he might have just killed 2 men. Like, not obviously directly, but, like, aided in their deaths. Like, what the fuck? Like, this is what Dipper was thinking about? Like, what? What the heck, Alex? Like, this is one of those things that I get so infuriated about when it comes to the whole Mabel situation. It's like, okay, so you guys talking about how you don't like Mabel because she did so-and-so thing, or she always cost so-and-so thing. It's just like, okay, maybe Mabel isn't perfect, but at least she would have confessed if she had cost someone their lives. Like, and I'm pretty sure the Gravity Falls fandom being hypocrites, like, they would probably have ripped Mabel apart if this was her who did it. Like Dipper gets a pass because he's Dipper Pines. Like, of course he would. But, like, this is so fucked up. Like, it's like, when you really think about it, it's like Dipper literally cost this, like, what the fuck? Like, come on. Like, Dipper literally was chilling, like, assuming that he killed these 2 guys. Like, oh my god. Like, what the fuck?
You fucking hypocrite.
It's shocking when you think about it. Like, all these little things about Gravity Falls that when you really stop and think about it even more, it's like, it's crazy. Like say what you want about Mabel, but, like, she didn't do something like this. Like, she didn't her action, like, nothing that she did resulted in her assuming that 2 guys got killed. And even if she did do something like that, like, knowing Mabel, she would have confessed it immediately. Like, you guys tried to treat Mabel, like, as some monster, but she isn't. And, like, Dipper, meanwhile, here, he's just totally chill about this fact. Like, it's so, like maybe someone's like, keep an eye on Dipper. He's probably a future serial killer. I mean, he does ciphers and stuff. Like, who knows? Dipper is a reincarnation of the Zodiac Killer. But, yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say on this. Like, I remember when I first realized this, and I was like, what the fuck? Like, what? Like, yeah, it's messed up. But, like, of course no one in the Gravity Falls fandom has talked about this because, of course, why would they? It's it's literally something critical about Dipper. It's like that's like the biggest sin that you can do in the Gravity Falls fandom, because obviously the Gravity Falls fandom is totally fair and totally non-biased towards hating on Mabel and protecting Dipper even when he shouldn't be. So yeah, there we go. Yeah, pretty much that's it. I'm gonna go now hide myself from the Mabel haters who are now gonna come at me because I talked about their golden child. So yeah, bye.
Holy fucking shit.